Ah, my nose. Today, we're gonna go over drum tuning and changing drum heads. The importance of this is kind of overlooked for most people. I don't know why, but just like guitar strings, it's really important for you to change drum heads, top and bottom. Obviously, the batter head on top that you're hitting is gonna need changed more than the bottom because all the bottom is doing is resonating. So the whole idea is to make sure your heads are fresh. Everything will affect it, moving it around, temperature for being inside, outside, hot, cold. It all affects it, so it's very important. That's what we're going to go over today, so you guys can get an idea of what I do as a drum tech on tour and at home with my own kit. Cool. So, as you guys can see, I already took the heads off of the top and the bottom of the shell. So it's nothing but the lugs right here that you'll see there and the inside of the shell. I already wiped it down a little bit, but one of the really important things you got to keep in mind when doing this is you have to wipe down the shell. I use Nomad Drum Detailer. Works really, really well. You can use this for the hoops, cymbals, any kind of drum shell, whether it's just a wood stain or a wrap or whatever. This stuff is great for tour or at home. Really comes in handy. So normally what I do is I take a regular rag or shop cloth or paper towels, just a couple sprays, super simple, and wipe it down. You can do it on anything like I mentioned. The metal too is really important to keep clean and dry because as a drummer, I know I sweat a lot and the guys I work for, they definitely sweat a lot. So all this stuff that we work with almost daily needs to be wiped down because of all the sweat. Sometimes drinks get spilled, and sometimes people like to spit. That is my job as a drum tech, and I spit on my own stuff too sometimes to clean it up to make sure it looks and sounds great. So you wipe it down, make sure you get the edges as well. That's really important. There's another thing that you can look up online if you're interested. You can get drum wax for wooden drum shells and put it right on the edge. Normally goes on the bearing edge. It's kind of a preference thing for most people. I don't use them, but it does actually help the shell last a little longer. And if you have any sort of debris, hair, any of the stick pieces that fall off that get stuck in there, it can affect the tuning of the head. As long as you maintain it and wipe it down and keep it clean and use a drum detailer, you don't have to use wax, in my opinion. So after you wipe down the shell, I'm going to go ahead and take all of the tension rods off of the top hoop. All of this takes a little bit of time, and do the exact same thing with the hoop. 2 sprays, whoops, and then wipe it down. It's going to be dusty, sweaty, you're going to have boogers on there, all kinds of stuff. But as long as you maintain this, you really don't have to worry about rust ever forming or any sort of chips from the paint if you have painted hardware or powder coated hardware. And over time, it'll just become routine. The first couple times you do it, it'll be really annoying, but once you get in a good routine, you'll know and realize how much it does affect the look and feel and the tuning of the drum. So, top head is ready, or the top of the shell is ready, sorry, and the hoop is ready. So, what I like to do with each drum head is I break it in. So I go around the edge, just like this. You can kind of see, I'm just breaking it in. Breaking all the plastic and glue on the edge of it. That's how we start. Put her down there. A little bit of pressure. Get your hoop, get it nice and seated. And depending on what kind of drums you use and what kind of rack system you might have, or cymbal stands, or how you mount your toms, one thing you always want to keep in mind is you have to put your bracket back on. This is something else that you want to clean from time to time. I already sprayed on here, so I'll just wipe it down a little bit. These are some older hoops, but because I maintained them, they don't look too bad. So I normally put them on each tension rod like this. Let me take this off real quick. Cool. So this should go on there right, as long as your drums are true. And then once you have that on there, put the drum head on and put your tension rods back on. One thing I will note, tension rods, it's really important to keep these from rusting. So you can get bar and chain lube at any hardware store. Usually, if you maintain your drums on a monthly basis or a weekly basis or daily basis if you're touring, you really don't need to put lubricant on these that often, but it's still really important. I personally have had tension rods rust on me, and eventually they get stuck and you got to drill them out, and then you got to get a new lug for your drum, and it can be really time consuming and definitely expensive. So a little bit of lube. Sometimes the tension rods come with it depending on the drum manufacturer. So as long as you maintain it, don't let it get too wet or be out in the humidity too long. Wipe everything down like I just mentioned, and you should be able to avoid any rusting. So that's it for the top head. We'll do the same for the bottom. So I'll take these off, wipe this guy down. I don't know if you want to film this or not. Just take a little bit of time. 2 sprays. Wipe it down. Some of these are in pretty bad shape, but I'll be honest, I haven't changed the bottom of my drum heads in a while. Cool. So that one's good. Ready to go. Just like the top head, the bottom head, you want to break it in. It's really important. It's going to make tuning so much easier, and you don't have to worry too much about what I've seen a lot of guys do is they tighten the head until it crackles, then they loosen it, and then they tune it. This saves a lot of time. You can hear I'm making the crackle noise already, because you're just breaking the glue. Also, I'm using a single ply head, which is really important to note on the bottom of your drums. Single ply is better, resonates a little bit less than the thicker plies, and that's easier to keep the tuning in check. So always try to get a single ply head for the bottom. Break it in, put the tension rods back on. It's good to have a couple drum keys if you can eventually learn how to get both hands to work at once. You can make this last a lot longer if you just use one key, but if you're in a hurry, it's good to have two. I've seen guys use automatic drills. I'm a little old school. I kind of like to use the drum keys because half of the fun is the process. So enjoy what you're doing, but also try to do it properly so you can have a good sounding drum. So that's it. We'll worry about tuning here in a little bit, but you got the bottom head and the top head. That's how you change them. Cool. I think we are moved on to the snare now. So we're going to be putting a new snare head on the top of my snare that I have from Spawn. This is a 13x7. Inside you can see we have cherry wood. On the outside it's Nuevo. This thing is gorgeous. It also sounds great. So you can see we still have the bottom head on. Just had it put on about a couple weeks ago, so I don't need to change that one right now. But just like the toms and any other shell that you're working on, drum detailer. So this bearing edge is really important. the top one especially on a snare because you use it the most. Sits right between your legs most of the time. Most drummers sit that way. So you're gonna get a lot of sweat, a lot of movement, and the most play out of any drum on average. Do the same thing for the hoop. The one thing I've noticed about this drum, pretty warm tones. So we decided to go with an Evans HD Dry because it has a good crack to it, but it still allows the drum to sing. And with the cherry wood on the inside, this has become one of my favorite snare drums. So this is wiped down, nice and good. Put down there. Like I said, we're using the HD Dry from Evans. It's got the holes around the outside. This thing sounds massive. It's gonna sound awesome on this snare. But before I put it on there, I forgot, break it up. Break that edge in. Try to be as smooth as you can with your thumbs, not missing any pieces. I was so glad after I learned how to do this, a fellow drum tech showed me. It saved me so much time on tuning. It's one of my favorite things about breaking in drums, is breaking the head in like that, because I know that it actually works really well. Cool. A little extra tension. Now it's time to put the hoop back on. A lot of people tune their drums to a note with a TuneBot. You can buy different drum tuning apps. I, for one, personally enjoy tuning by ear. Every day it's going to sound different because most of the time the rooms or the arenas or the amphitheaters that you're playing are going to be different sizes, different temperatures, different layout of the stage. If you tuned it to the same note, doesn't mean it's going to sound the same through the speakers or out front. So it's really good to have a good sound guy that you guys can agree on the way that it needs to be tuned. Currently, I've been fortunate enough to work with some really, really good sound guys, but George is the main sound guy for Marilyn Manson, and him and I work really well together. He'll let me know pretty quickly if I need to retune something, and it's pretty easy to work with him when it comes to that. But since we tune by ear every day, I will do the normal finger tight with all of the tension rods all the way around on the snare before I do anything else. Then I'll take my keys, and I like these Tama keys because it has this little nub on the top. Makes it super easy to do this kind of tuning technique. So I will just tune it, or turn it rather, as much as I can just with my fingers without touching the wing on the sides. And I'll do that all the way around. So then it's finger tight, and then just barely tightened a little bit more with one of these drum keys. And then until I sit down behind the kit and hit it, let it break in a little bit more, let it kind of seat for a few minutes at least, sometimes up to an hour. I won't actually put a full tuning into it until that time, when I'm sitting behind the kit. And that is how I change drum heads. And we'll see how it sounds here in a little bit. And that's it. All right guys, we already got the heads on the top and the bottom of all the toms. New head on the kick drum and the snare, just on the batter head side. Right now I'm gonna kind of go over how I normally tune, and this works for my kit, for a lot of the kits I worked with. This is a fully maple kit, except for the snare. And this tuning works for amphitheaters, clubs. It can be used on the fly when you can't hear anything, if you're backstage opening for another band, or you're the headliner and you're trying to make sure your drums are going to sound good for the show. This usually works every time I've used it. I've had guys tune to a note I'm more of a feel guy. I like to do it all natural and feel and let the drum speak for itself. So if you know how to tune, you know how to break in the heads. Top and bottom both matter. Everyone needs to know that. I do a very loose tuning. So in order to get this sound, one again. It's not that hard. So what I'm going to do real quick is down tune one of these toms to show you how I normally do it. You can hear it actually has a pretty even tone on the top and the bottom. So I'm just going to loosen the top, because especially when you're on tour, you're about to go on stage, all of a sudden one of your toms is acting up and you're just like, I don't know what to do. Do this really, really quickly. Just loosen the top head. Doesn't matter if you have sound or not. That's one of the things that you need to know when it comes to being a musician or a touring musician or a gigging musician, is you don't always have the option to have sound on your side. So this not only works when you don't have the ability to hear your tom, but it works when you have the ability to hear it as well. So it works on both sides of it. So I loosened it all the way around the entire drum, every tension rod. This only has 6 lugs. So fully loose. Now you can see when I push on the drum that there's going to be ripples. So even pressure right in the middle, and then just bring each tension rod flat. So that means the drum head is going flat as you're tuning it, but you're really not tuning, you're just turning the key. You bring each one of those in the star pattern, which most people, that's how they tune, to a flat area. You need light for that at least. So if you have a flashlight, if you're in the backstage area, put a flashlight on it, hold it with your mouth, whatever you need to do. Just give it a nice flat tuning, and it should hopefully go right back to where you had it before. It's exactly what you want. So the whole point is, you don't have to have a tune bot, you don't have to have an app, you don't have to have a drum dial. You can do this all just from your drum key and your eyes. You don't need to hear it or anything. It's always good to check it, but you can do this for the top and the bottom of the head, or of the drum. Top and bottom head on each drum. Once you do that, you have the natural tuning. Your drum's going to sound the way it's supposed to. This is maple, and this is the way it's supposed to sound. I'm using clear heads on the top and the bottom, double ply on top, Evans EC2s, single ply on the bottom heads. It's the best way to go in my opinion, and you can always get a really, really good tuning. Most sound guys are going to like it if you come to a show prepared and you're tuned properly, because then they won't have to tell you, you need to fix that, it sounds bad, or it's got too much resonance in the bottom head. Check the bottom heads first before you even tweak the top, because if those are out, you'll never get a good tuning, especially if the only focus is going to be on the top heads. So next one would be the snare. Normally what I do is I do the same loose tuning for those, and then I add a couple extra tweaks to it when you're spinning the actual drum key for each tension rod. So right now it's actually in a really good spot. So just like the simple flat tuning, I would say a full rotation for each tension rod after that. Let it break in, let it feel the room or the area you're in, and you're going to find a great tuning that way. And that's perfect. Hopefully you'll get a good sound out of it, and if we need to, we can go into more depth later. So today we went over changing drum heads on the top and the bottom of all of your toms, snare, and kick drum. The good thing about all of this is it's super simple and easy. I know it can be very intimidating tuning drums just like any other instrument, but it's very necessary and it's really important, and I was hoping to be able to relay that to the people of the world that are watching, and also share some of my knowledge from being a drum tech on tour. It's been super, super helpful to have fellow drum techs who've been doing it like twice as long as I have. But the loose tuning is the best way to do it. You don't need to hear it. It's a really, really good way to practice doing the bottom head and the top head. Then your drums will sound the way they're supposed to, which is really important in my opinion. So hopefully you guys got a little bit of knowledge from it. If you have any questions, please leave them in comments. And if you have any suggestions for future videos or anything you guys would like to learn or ask me or anything, don't hesitate to let me know. And see you guys next time. Right on.